Hi and welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I last posted a video, and I know I kind of promised a little bit that I was going to do some build videos and get into some editing, but it's still taking a little bit of time. I've found a contact that can help me with a bit of the video editing, so I want to kind of experiment with that a little bit before I start throwing things out. So I wanted to create a bit of a short video on a machine that I've got, just to kind of put something out there. Because I did a podcast recently with Alistair Johnson from Freebird Interiors, and we spoke about my business, but we also did a section on mental health, and that was the video that he put out to his YouTube followers and his Instagram followers. And after that video, I had a lot of people move over to my Instagram account, which if you're one of those people, I'm super grateful. But I also was really shocked at the amount of people that moved over to my YouTube channel. Even though I've got very few videos on there, people were good enough to subscribe to the channel, and it's really boosted my numbers up just still below 50 subscribers. So I appreciate it. I'm not the easiest channel to find, because YouTube, until you get to 100 subscribers, you can't put an actual name to the channel. So until I reach that goal, I am a little bit difficult to find. I know one guy commented, he coming up, Ben Cartwright is coming up with Bonanza, which I do get remarks about. And funnily enough, my PE teacher at school, for anyone that knows, but he used to call me Os, which is apparently what the nickname of the Ben Cartwright was in Bonanza. So if you relate to that, then great. I don't mind. I've been called a lot worse. But yeah, so I just wanted to firstly just say, if you are watching this video and you are not only one of the people that first come on board, but if you are one of the new subscribers, great. It's brilliant, and I hope that you can get something from this channel. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an update of what I kind of want to achieve out of this channel, is a little bit similar to Alistair. I think Alistair's been in business for around 10 years with doing his built-in furniture, and his followers are enjoying the process of him expanding and growing his business and seeing the difficulties and the ups and downs of the process. And I'm very much in the same boat. I've been operating for 5 years, and I'm still really in the infancy of building. I've got a decent workshop set up now, which I'll do a workshop update, because I have made changes from my last video on the workshop, which I think people will be interested to see. So I am going to be doing that. But yeah, I am going to share some more posts on how I go about running my business, pricing, design, materials, and I think it's just interesting to get another person's perspective on what we do. I certainly, when I found Alistair through Instagram, and I saw his early videos of pricing, and it was so useful. It was so good to hear someone just talking about it, because it is one of those grey areas. I think we all kind of dread it. You get the job and you think, could I ask more? Or you don't get the job and am I too expensive? Or did I not come across right? And you're constantly kind of, so the pricing game is, I think, is, for me anyway, and speaking to a lot of other people that have their own business, the pricing side is one of the things that kind of gives you a bit of a headache. So, but I don't want to keep this video too long, but I do want to give the correct information across to kind of, for someone that might be looking at possibly using this machine, just to kind of give them as much insight as I can so they can get a real benefit from this. Because when I actually come to buy this machine, there's no, well, I couldn't find any anyway. I mean, you go on YouTube and you type in the tool that you're buying, and sometimes you find you might find it, 9 times out of 10 you find a review. But when you start getting into woodwork machinery, you know, not everybody buys this brand and that brand, and you know, not everyone's willing to put a video on YouTube. So I thought that I'll do this. One is because basically what I'm talking about is a spindle molder. Now, you know, hopefully people that are watching, you know, they know what a spindle molder is. But if you've never used a spindle molder, it's basically a larger version of a router table. But like, you have a motor with a 30mm spindle block, and you have blocks like this that you put your cutters in, and you know, you can put mouldings through, create rebates, grooves. You know, they use a lot in window manufacture. You know, some of the bigger scale spindle molders, you know, with sliding tables. This one that I've got has got a sliding table, but it's more designed for, you know, very smaller projects. You could make a window out of it. You could make some small window tenons, but you couldn't do door tenons on it. It's not really, I haven't used it at this moment with the sliding table, because to be honest, you know, I spoke with Alistair about this, about making shaker doors, and I know the traditional ways is to create like small tenons to go into the groove, but there are quicker ways of doing it, and I think, to be honest, I wouldn't go down the route, even though I've got a sliding table. I wouldn't necessarily use it to do that. I can see me possibly using it in the future, but not necessarily I wouldn't use it for shaker doors. But I'm just going to basically, I'll walk over now and I'll show you the machine. I've made some alterations to the fencing, which is different to what you buy off the shelf, and I'll explain that. And then I'll just come back and just talk about some of the variety of cutters that you can get, the difference in cutters, and I'll show you some moulding that I've done today on it. And I just think hopefully you can kind of see an alternative to a router table, because I'll say this now rather than get into it later. Because of my background, and because of being a bench joiner and working within the commercial environment, and fairly large scale joinery companies, the two that I worked for before working for myself, the spindle molder was the go-to machine for moulding, rebates, grooving. It wasn't, we never really had a router table, so I've only ever known a spindle molder. So although you know, router tables are really great, they're a great tool to have, and there's some upsides to having a router table, but I do prefer when you're doing you know, large quantities of mouldings or big rebates or grooving and things like that. I just find, because I've always been used to using a spindle molder, that's what I basically wanted to get. When I set my workshop up, I know everybody's got different opinions on what they do and don't need, but the way I saw it, because of the work that I'm trying to do, which is mainly built-in furniture, panelled products, I needed to spend the most amount of money on my panel saw, and then basically off that was, we all need timber to different sizes, being in the woodworking industry, so planer thicknesser was definitely a go-to one. I wasn't too sure, I would have liked a bandsaw, but I wasn't too sure if I'd be able to afford a bandsaw. But luckily enough, I did manage to get a bandsaw, and a good one, which I was really pleased about, and then a spindle molder. And I knew that I couldn't afford a better, heavier duty spindle molder starting out, because you're talking probably £2,500, probably, like, minimum, and that's for a second-hand one. And I kind of thought to myself, what am I going to be doing? What am I going to be using it for? This, that, and the other. And when I saw this iTech brand, which you've seen before, whether on my Instagram or YouTube, I have spoke about my iTech panel saw. You know, it's a great brand, and for anyone just kind of looking to transition into getting their first machines, really, you know, iTech do some exceptional machines for exceptional prices. I only really know of Scott and Sargent seem to be the ones that flag up as soon as you put iTech into anything. Scott and Sargent seem to come up. So whether it's their kind of, they push that brand, I don't know. But for someone that's starting out, for someone like myself, I wanted to get as close to new machines as I could, because I know then that I can look after them, and no one's used them prior to me. So if I take care of them, they'll last as long as I need them. And these machines I just see as basically, if my business expands, these will just go to, you know, I'll have 2 planers, I'll have another spindle molder. I won't be selling these off. You know, I shall just be, these will just grow with the business. So these are a long, you know, as long as they last kind of machines. That's the investment that I've seen. And obviously the next most important thing is getting a decent extractor, especially with a panel saw, because the dust is horrendous. Like, you cannot run that machine without the extractor on. You know, if you're ripping MDF down, we know what it's like with the track saw. You know, if you don't put the vac on, you know, it's bad. And when you work in an enclosed space, the dust gets bad quick. So I'm going to get onto the machine, and we'll talk about that, and then we'll come back, we'll talk about the cutters. I wanted to have a little chat about tulip wood. I don't know if anyone's used tulip wood. You probably have. I never have. I just want to have a quick chat about that. And yeah, we'll just see how it goes. It might be a long video. If you're bored already, you know, and it's not for you, then obviously you can switch off now, and, you know, maybe come back to some of the other videos that might spark your interest, you know, some of the making videos and stuff. But I'll show you the Spindle Molder now. So this is the Spindle Molder. I'll just, so basically on here, you've got a tiltable spindle, so you can tilt to 30 degrees. You've got your varying speeds here, up to 9,000. Most spindle cutters are between 6 and 9. I think you can get more that go higher than that, and the higher grade spindle molders may go above 9,000, but I'm not too sure on that. But you can put a sanding bobbin in this, because 1800 is quite slow, and I assume that the 1800 is for the sanding bobbin. I've never used it to this point, and you have to obviously change the belt. Basically, whenever you put whatever belt you put on, one of those lights engages when you turn the machine on. So to look at it, it looks quite. This is where the sliding carriage goes on here. It's only a small little sliding carriage, but it has got a decent fence on it with stops, so you can stop for your tenons and stuff. But basically, when the spindle molder comes, these are the fences. So that's the fence, and one that side, which is this one. One there, one there. Which is okay. It's okay. It's what you kind of. It's what you expect at this price point. And this here is basically the hold down. That's the hold down to the pressure going down onto the piece. And this here, although I use it as a guard now, that actually presses that way. Now, the reason why I've done what I've done on here, as you can see, I've got these feather boards, is because these, what I found, were just not adequate enough to hold. They're okay if you're doing decent size section, but as soon as you come to small mouldings, they're almost useless. So I knew that I had to kind of come up with something that's better. just to make it more usable, and but what you want to try and stop is any vibration when the piece is going through, because the more vibration, it'll still go through, but if you don't keep the pressure on, the workpiece lifts off, and you end up with all ridges in your moulding, and you have to, means a lot of sanding and trying to smooth them all out, and it just creates more work. One of the downsides to this, what I've found, is the handle broke. It is really quite flimsy plastic, and I just happened to catch it on the end. I didn't even force it, and it broke. I fixed it. This is the third time that I've glued that on, and now I've decided to put some pieces either side to strengthen it. I know I could probably buy a new one, but I just thought I'll just see if I can fix it for the time being. So there are, like, you know, they are a bit flimsy, but everything else, you know, everything else is really solid. The sliding carriage is solid. You know, it's a weighting machine. What's also good about this is it is a weighting machine, but you could put it on a movable base quite easily, and it would move around the shop. Some machines, they're a bit unwieldy, they're a bit heavy, and to put it on a mobile base, you know, I don't really like the idea. It's like my bandsaw. It's like, you know, that's quite a heavy machine, and I mean, you know, you wouldn't want to put that on a moving base, you know. But something like this, you could easily put this on a movable base, and like literally put it to one corner of the shop, if you don't use it that much. And this machine, I knew that it's not something that where I could say I'm using it all the time, because I'm not. I'm using the panel saw the most of the time, but it's for the future. It's an investment for further down the line. And what I didn't want to do is buy one machine, then 6 months down the line buy another machine, and 6 months down the line buy that machine. I wanted to try and do it all in one hit. One, to try and get the best price I could, because I'm buying more machines, but just so I can kind of, you know, you've got it from day one, if you know what I mean. So what I do now is, just as an extra protection, I've obviously, if you can just see into the mouth of the machine there, that is like as big a cutout as I should require. Now, in the past on the Spindle Molders, when I worked for other companies, sometimes you have you can slide them, so you literally, just the cutter actually cuts through the fascia part, so it's just literally the cutter that's exposed, so there's no mouth to the machine. Now that's really good, that's great, it's really safe working, but it does knack your cutters, because every time you go through usually it's like MDF board, and even if you're using plywood, it's really heavy on the cutters to like push it through the blade. So it really sort of dulls so I thought to myself, you know what, I'm just going to basically have a bigger open mouth as what I require, and you know, and leave it at that. Basically what you don't want is the piece, as you're pushing it through to start with, you don't want it to basically fall into the cutter, because what happens is you can get kicked back. But that's why I've decided to put feather boards like basically there and there, because it keeps the pressure consistent even after it's gone through the cutter. Because what I've found, I have done a few mouldings where ideally you want the feather board to be right over the top of the cutter, but sometimes the cutter actually protrudes out and it can catch the feather board. So it just depends on what you're actually pushing through, to whether you can do that or not. So being able to have one front and one back is definitely a bonus, and they work really well. All this is from Axminster, so the T-Track. These come as a pack, and this is just white melamine MDF. So, and I've got plenty of that. You can see the boards behind, so there's plenty of that knocking around. And I thought, when I come to do this, it was a thing that I was dreading on doing. I was thinking, oh, I've got to make a fence, and I've got to groove it all out, and I've got to do this and that. But I've got to be honest, it took me probably three or 4 hours of like just, you know, because nothing goes super quick and you got to kind of think about what you're doing, but probably three or 4 hours and it was done, all done. And obviously I've had to kind of come up with that sort of setup, you know, to kind of get through so at the back, so those would slide through that groove. And so I had to kind of come up with some sort of way of doing that. And, you know, we all kind of get around these little issues and little problems. But yeah, I mean, that's basically, that's the machine as it is. So hopefully, you know, if someone's kind of looking at possibly getting something like a spindle molder, just especially a start out spindle molder, I can't think of anything better than what's in front of me. But I'll just do a little talk now about the cutters. So the cutters, there's basically, that's the block will take these Euro cutters, and what you get with this one, the difference between these two blocks, although they look pretty much the same, is this one has got what's called a limiter in the back, which basically balances the block. But I didn't realise you could get these until I actually started looking into like CMT and Trend. They do ones with no balancer, and you just put the one cutter in. I've always, going back to what I said earlier, I've always been used to using limiters. So to use this, I mean, to be honest, going forward, I'd probably just stick to, these cutters have been given to me by another joiner who had his own business, and he'd got some spare cutters, and I asked him if I could, you know, if he wanted them or not, and he's been very kindly donated them to me. So, you know, but the ones I've purchased, which I bought CMT, which is through Scott and Sargent, just as it happens. I have those ones. They're for this block, and they've got limiters. So like I say, it's just, and I do find with this one, compared to this one, the location of the cutters, when you put them in the block, there's no fiddling around, where there is a little bit on this one. I don't know whether it's just because of the age of the block, because they might be slightly better with a newer block, but with this one, it's just drop the cutter in, tighten it up, job done. And the cutters, what again, going back to buying router cutters and things like that, the more intricate and larger the router cutter is, one is you need quite a powerful router to start with, but two is they're very expensive, and you can get them, obviously you can get them sharpened, but obviously over time, I don't know how well they'll sharpen. They probably will, but they're expensive to buy. Whereas these aren't badly priced really. I don't want to say off the top of my head because I'm going to probably say wrong, but they are good. They're cheaper than buying a similar router cutter. You know, I know you can buy like the cheaper Trend, like the Trade Trend, the green ones. Those are cheaper router cutter. But if you're buying the professional ones, which are the black ones, those are probably some of your dearer ones. And obviously, if you do CMT as well, they can be quite expensive. So to me, you can build up quite a large repertoire of cutters for a good cost really. And I mean, you could probably sharpen these yourself. We've done it in the past where I've worked, where we've just, you know, you just kind of ease either ease the flat side and maybe just take a little bit on the, you know, just to kind of give it a bit more bite. But they're usually pretty good. So yeah, and just to go back onto the blocks, because this is set up. This is a straight cutter. If you can see that, it's a straight cutter. Now I can do a rebate on that. I've rebated some MDF this morning to go over some 6mm panelling. But the issue with if you just had this block for rebaiting, it's fine, but what happens is you tend to get a lot of breakouts if you've got, depending on what you're putting through, if you've got good timber, you might get away with it and do it at a steady pace, don't force it through. But I've done it in the past, and even trying your best, you end up with some breakout. So, and what that is really you need a designated rebaiting block, and the same with a groover. I mean, you could buy a cutter, I've got one here, like that, could put a groove in something if you wanted to. But what happens is, because there's no what's called like it's basically like a scribe, like a cutter, star cutter at the top, and what that does is it scores the timber before the actual cut, so it stops that breakout. We use, that's what I've been used to using, like a designated rebate block, a designated grooving block. They are expensive to buy. You're looking at like probably 200 quid for a rebating block, and 200 quid for a decent grooving block, up to, which will do like a 6mm groove up to about 15, which is fine for me, because you're only going to use, you're either going to use 6mm MDF or 12mm. I don't think you're going to use anything thicker than that. So those are fine for me, and I've looked at some prices, and you can get them for probably about 180 quid for each block. But that's it then. What you get is you get interchangeable. They're much cheaper to renew the blades because they're interchangeable blades, so that they're almost like, sometimes you get on the plane, you get the thin replacement blades. You can get them on routers now, they're doing like replacement cutters and tips and things like that. But basically they're much cheaper to rotate the cutters and things like that, so they last a long time. And they create a really nice clean cut. Because if you were doing a groove with something like that, say if you're doing a shaker door, you'd probably end up with like breakouts along the groove. And then if you're just doing a typical style shaker where you've got no panel moulding, you'll see the breakout. So you do need one with a scribe, because on the groove ones you've got a scribe top and bottom. So that's the one thing to think about if you're thinking about, I could do my grooving on that, and then all of a sudden you've got to spend like 200 quid on a grooving block. So something to bear in mind if that's what you're going to purely be using it for, because I know a lot of makers do use like router tables, like the Festool router setup to do their shaker doors, or some people do it on the saw, with a dado stack. But like I said, I'm just doing what I've always known. I wouldn't say taught. I mean, I was taught, but I'm not saying that any of these other ways of working are wrong, because it's not. It's just a different way, and that's why I'm doing this video, because I don't see a lot of people using what I'm using, and I'm just putting another alternative out there for someone to possibly think about. But another thing with another argument that you might ask yourself is, well, if you're doing panel moulding, why don't you buy it, from like dresser moulding, and that's a really valid point. Why not just buy it, just buy it in, and that's fine. It's just, I've just been used to, wherever we used to work, we used to do jobs, and we used to get moulding out by the metre of different sorts of moulding all the time, and it's just I don't know, ingrained in me to think that, I need some moulding. What can what cutter can I use? And it's nice to just do some alternatives sometimes. So like, I'll use this moulding for that, and I'll use this mould, because I like to try and keep a little bit of difference on the jobs, rather than throw everyone down the same route. Sometimes I think, that would be nice on this, and I'll do that different on that. So each job's got a tiny little tweak, just to give people that little bit of perhaps difference to what someone else has got. But I wanted to briefly talk about tulip wood. There's probably a lot of people out there possibly watching this that have used it. But I've seen it. I went to Latham's and I've seen it, and I thought, oh, and then I asked some questions about it, what it was used for, and this, that, and the other, and I thought, great, I really want to give that a try. It's very similar to Colour to Poplar, which I have used before, and so this is the moulding that I've done today. So that's basically, I'm going to create a picture frame with that moulding. Again, with one of these cutters, which is in that block there. And I don't know how well the camera picks it up, but it's you can see how fairly smooth that is, where it's not got a lot of ridges in, which means it's gone through the spindle quite smoothly, and the pressure's been on it good. It hasn't got any movement on it. So, and just going back to the tulip wood, I do really like it. It planed up through the planer. It's quite a nice, it's got a soft feel to it, so it's kind on the cutters. But from what I've heard of, like when I ask the questions, it's very stable. It's used, a lot of people make a skirting board out of it, and an architrave for some of the more high-end projects, and it's got good stability. You don't get a lot of cupping and twisting and bowing and all that sort of jazz that you do, sometimes with softwood. I do like softwood, and you can get some really nice clear pine in 25mm boards to make some nice mouldings out of. But I wanted to give this tulip wood a try, and I would definitely look to use it in the future. I did really like it. So, and just going back to, like, this moulding which is on there. I did put that on with my router, but you could set the Spindle Molder up to do that on the Spindle Molder, because the good thing is with the Spindle Molder is when you're doing pieces like this, as you can see, it is really fiddly with the router, pressure, holding it down and things like that. You usually have to put clamps one end, and then router take the clamps off, move the clamps, and then, whereas if you set the Spindle Molder up, you can just push it through, and you haven't got to again worry about movement and this, that, and the other. All these things, it all boils down to a bit of time, doesn't it? It's like, save me 5 minutes there, or it'll take me 10 minutes to set the Spindle Molder up, or I'll have it done in 5 minutes with a router, and you're always kind of questioning yourself which is the quickest method and all this sort of stuff. But I think once you get set up and you can get some sort of way of working, I think it's a much of a much, really. I like to use both. I've got quite a large selection of router cutters, so I'm the same. Like, I don't want to buy like a large section of router cutters and never use them. So I swap and change between the two machines. But I just wanted to cover this video about this Spindle Molder to hopefully help people out there should they need it. So I think I've covered enough for this video. It's longer than I would have expected, because I got away talking about different bits and bobs. But I hope if you've stuck to it till this point, then thank you. I hope it's been worthy sort of listening to, and you've maybe taken something from it. If you have got any questions about the machine, I'm on Instagram, Ben Cartwright Joinery. If you want to send me a message, or if you want to put a comment on the YouTube video, I'll try and answer it as best I can. But yeah, just to finish off, thank you for everyone that's subscribed. Thank you if you've subscribed to this and you've become a follower on Instagram. I'm hoping to do some really good things over, I see this as a long-term sort of investment into YouTube. So, over the time, I'm hoping to bring more interesting videos, and anyone that's in our kind of line of work, you know, perhaps someone that's a few steps behind me, give them the info that they need to get to the next stage, because that's what I'm kind of learning from the people that are in front of me. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and definitely stay safe with everything that's going on. Look after yourselves and stay at home.